record. Hello, Barbara. Good morning to you.
Morning, Nadine.
How are you?
Hanging in there. I just turned 80.
Happy birthday. Yes, it's true. We're both Virgos.
Yeah. To the dismay of many.
What's that?
To the dismay of many with our organized minds.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, I heard actually that Jennifer Lopez refuses to work with Virgos.
Oh, really?
Yes, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's something I heard.
Oh, funny.
So thank you so much for accepting my invitation. As you know, I read your book, A Dance with the Devil, a couple of months ago, and I reached out to you because I was so inspired by your resilience. Your book details the story of your former marriage to a psychopath, and a marriage that you obviously escaped from, and you became you became a voice for many women through how you chose to move forward after your divorce. So first things first, um, when did you, what prompted you to write your story?
Well, after the admiral, who said that he was an admiral, turned out he wasn't, but after he tried to murder me, I was on a business trip. It was about a month later, and I'm looking out the window. It's raining, and I thought, well, why did this happen to me? And at that point, I decided I needed to write a book to help others to understand how these psychopaths prey on women, how that they can go after intelligent women. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter who you are. You can say it'll never happen to me, but it does happen.
Right. Can you take me back to the first day, or I should say evening, you met your ex-husband?
Yeah, I had been was at work and my friend called me and she said, I need a fourth for dinner. And this is a friend that I knew her and her husband for quite a while. And she said, "Oh, you're going to meet this interesting person." And I said, "Oh, okay." But I said, "I'm really tired. I had to come in really early in the morning to work in the lab." But so she talked me into it. So when I showed up and I'm in the sitting down in the living room, and in comes this tall, charming looking fellow with the and he had a neck brace on, but very, very outgoing, charismatic, uh, and the evening just flowed. He had a lot of different stories, and said he was at that point he was saying he was a captain, a retired captain in the Navy, but eventually that turned into later on to a retired admiral. And he just a lot of stories, and the he was doing business with the husband, my friend, and he confirmed a lot of these stories. They would go off on these trips and for business into Mexico, and yeah, so it was a pleasant evening, and I enjoyed it.
Hmm. Would you say that your friend's husband corroborating his stories made them more convincing?
Of course, it's it's and that I'm in their home with him. It's not like I'm sitting in a bar and there's no background at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was like I didn't feel in a threatened position in meeting
Okay.
him.
Yeah. How quickly did you fall for him? And he for you?
Well, can't speak for him because he was working with his psychopath mind, but for me, probably a couple of days later, I was going to have um, uh, I had, oh, I know, it was, you have to pardon me because the memory is like going back 40 years here. So I had tickets for a concert venue, and so I thought, well, I'll call him and ask him see if he wants to go, and he said yes, and so he came over and we went to the concert, and basically he came back with me and kind of never left.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say that those couple of like the first months with him were kind of like a dream come true. Like he swept you off your feet. Um, he was attentive, he made you happy. Is that how you eventually fell for him?
Yeah, I mean, you what I discovered later on was that I was lonely and I didn't realize it at the time. And so he coming in and filling this void and, doing things and going out for dinners and, and all these stories and that, it was like it was became part of my life. And then he was wearing this neck brace. So he had a lot of pain. And so, you know, it turned into what women usually, oh, let me help you, we can take care of this. And yeah, so, you fall into it and, sometimes we just don't realize how lonely we are as women.
Okay. So do you think that men like him can smell loneliness in a
Oh,
woman and that's what sort of attracts them
I
to,
think
yeah.
my experience, yes, I believe that that's true. I think that we as women are trained to be caregivers and to, you know, we share too much of our life story right away when we meet somebody, so we can give them all the clues that they need to say, aha, this is going to be my mark.
Yeah. So they're kind of like looking for I don't want to say weakness, but like your like a woman's vulnerability and they prey on it.
Sure. I mean, if you look at some of the famous um, serial killers, what was it, Ted Bundy? He would always put a cast on his arm and approach a woman, oh, can you help me? And then he'd murder him. Yeah, so they're looking for that weakness, that the kindness that a woman will
Yeah.
exude is what they can prey on.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time that you noticed a red flag?
Well, when I noticed some things happening, I didn't really think of them as red flags. Um, at the time when after he had moved in with very little, and he had stories about this house that he owned in a neighboring town in a very upscale area, and um, but yet, and then he had talked about family, but I was never able to talk to any family on the phone or see photos or just you know little things here and there. But you think, okay, well, he always said he was the black sheep of the family, and that can be true. And later on, eventually, I found out that that was true. So with him and with these people, they're very clever at taking a nugget and building that's true and building a falsehood around it.
Yeah.
So then as again, back to the codependency. So as things would happen, like he borrowed my credit card. Well, one of my things is this now is you should never, anybody you're dating, you should never lend them your credit card. And you have to and try to understand the reason why are they asking for my credit card.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they because you didn't, all of a sudden you want to try to make things work because you're enjoying their company and whatever, and so it's just like, okay, well, we can work this out. And um,
Right.
so the real red flag that started to trigger something in me didn't take place until 9 years later, and that was when um, in my I call 1990 my strange year, my weird year, and things there started happening that just all of a sudden really didn't make sense. And by the end of that year, sitting in the hot tub with him, and I said, John, I said, who are you? And then he told me the whole same story. Now I had gone to, I had become so suspicious that I had gone to the library and started looking up things that he had told me,
Yes, because
because this
we
was
didn't have Google and
pre-internet days. So if there's anything anybody listening today gets out of this, use the internet. If you meet somebody, if they say they own some property, go look in the county records or whatever. If they say they did whatever, investigate them right up front. And
yeah.
it sounds like a cruel thing to do, like a not trusting thing to do, but especially in this internet dating and all that's going on now. You really have to protect yourself, and
Yeah.
investigating is one way of doing it. And so I had investigated in the library, and John had said he had won a Congressional Medal of Honor for service in Vietnam, and I found a book on the Congressional Medal of Honor winners in Vietnam, and John wasn't listed. And then I found the obituary for his father, who was Rear Admiral Perry, that was started the Seabees in World War II, but John wasn't listed. And uh, and so uh, and then I had found it was some other things. So when I confronted him, that was the other thing that, and then of course he tells me all the same stories again. It just things just weren't adding up. But then you want them to add up, you want
Yeah.
them to work. And he came up with another story, and of course these guys are really good. So if you bring some proof to them, they say, "Oh well, the author of that book just missed me," and that's why my name's in there. And he says, and for my father's obit, he says, "I told you I was the black sheep of the family," and they refused to put my name in. And I found out that was true later on when I finally did meet his stepmother.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now you're confused again, and you want it to work, and but that was that 1990. There were some things that happened during that year that, again, I didn't identify them until after the murder attempt, when the homicide detective started talking with me. And there were the three events in 1990. There was a car wreck where he was driving, and he almost uh, drove into the tree on my side. There was the fall down the stairs. There was a probably he was going to attempt to murder me when we went to Florida, and he had this fake heart attack, which he had a way of doing a heart attack that made it look real. I mean, he was in intensive care for 3 days, and I found a gun in his briefcase on that one. So he was his world apparently was starting to fall apart with all his falsehoods of being this retired rear admiral, which it turns out he wasn't.
Yeah. It
But
really takes like a special, and I don't mean special in a good way, type of person to go to the lengths of faking a heart attack to weasel their way out of a lie they got caught in.
correct, yeah, they're good. These people, they're just so convincing, and they turn on a dime. If you could tell them that it's raining today, they'll turn around on why it's raining and why they said it wasn't going to rain. I mean, they're really really good,
Yeah.
and it leaves you into what I call the crazy making world. And because when they do this, then you feel like you're going crazy for even suspecting them. They're
Yeah.
they're so good.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, it's that women's intuition, that little voice that tells you when something is off with someone. And even though they may have a perfect explanation for the issue that you're bringing up, there's something about it that may convince you logically, but in your gut, you just feel like that's not true or that's not the entirety of it. Like there's more to the story than what you're being told.
Right. But it's just, I mean, he wore a Congressional Medal of Honor. We sat in the Congressional Medal of Honor stands for the inauguration for Bush the first. And uh,
You attended that ceremony.
oh yeah,
Goodness.
I've been piped aboard ships as an admiral and his wife. I mean, he was fooling the Navy. People
Yeah.
say, "Well, don't you feel stupid that he fooled you?" I said, "Why should I? He fooled the Navy." you know,
Yeah.
he was good.
So you mentioned a couple of um, attempted murders, and I don't want to go through all of them because I really want people to read your book. But can we talk about the one where you got into a car with him after having taken some, I believe, medication to sleep?
Yeah, so I would always drive, and I mean, I love driving, so I was the driver if we ever went anywhere. And my sister and I had gone to Arkansas to uh, stay with our grandfather for a couple of days and visit him. And John showed up just out of the blue with the story. Oh, he was on his way to do a job interview in Washington D.C. and he was, when we left, and I was going to go on for a business trip, and he was going to go on for his interview. And then he said, "Oh well, here, you're going to have to be traveling tomorrow. Why don't you relax here, take this pill?" And I said, "Well, I don't really take these pills." Like, no, no, no. You'll feel better. You'll get a good sleep. And I don't know what he gave me. It could have been a Benadryl. Who knows? But so then he goes into his briefcase. Says, "Oh no, I forgot to mail the tax returns, and it was April 15th, and you had to be postmarked April 15th."
Yeah.
So now it's like 10 o'clock at night, and we get dressed. I had already gotten dressed for bed, so I put the coat on, and then he said, "Oh, but you can't drive, because you've had the sleeping pill." So we go all the way into town and mail the packet. And on the way back, my grandfather lived on a more rural road, and it came down to where you would do a complete 90-degree turn to the left and then another 90-degree turn to the right, going over railroad tracks. And we were getting close to that 90-degree turn, and I said, and it's raining, and I said, "John, you better slow down, you're not going to make the turn." And at that point, he said, "Oh, I'm losing control," and he veers off the road to the right, and I would start crashing through bushes and whatever, and then it finally came to rest. Fortunately, right before we went into this river, and then he couldn't get out. His side was had jammed, so I had to climb out the window of my side to get out. And I went up to the road and hailed somebody, and the police came and went to the hospital. And I had glass all in my hair, and I don't remember scratches, whatever. And the next day, my uncle had come over, and we went back to look at the crash site, and that's where I realized that I came within inches of being rammed into a tree.
And that was his intention.
Yes, yes, but not realizing at the time what was happening. I mean, it didn't the it just the pieces didn't fit that. Oh, he's trying to murder you. That it fit that. Well,
Yeah.
it made me mad because he didn't do the taxes and whatever.
Did the thought or the possibility even like cross your mind for like half a second that it was intentional?
No,
No.
no.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, I didn't. It just was like it was kind of weird, but it wasn't like why would I even think he was trying to murder me? That was that didn't
Yeah.
cross my mind at all.
Why do you think he tried to murder you at that time?
Um, he was he had been doing some work with another rear admiral in the Navy, and they were doing had created this business, and he I think that admiral had gotten kind of suspicious finally, and so the FBI had started or the FBI was involved at one point, but the guy had stopped, the admiral had stopped doing business with him, and I think that the world was falling apart, and he wasn't able to get any jobs, if through the Navy or through his contacts, and I think he started to get acting out of desperation that if I died and I was on a business trip because I was going on for business, then he would get a lot of extra insurance.
I mean it's disgusting. But it's also, I mean, like the calculation required to plan for something like this, like to create the perfect context for an attempted murder like this to take place, is something that I don't even want to try to relate to because
Evil.
it's evil. That's the word I was looking for. It's evil. Um, from like from almost like drugging you also to make sure that you're incapacitated in some way, and to be willing to let you go for money. It is just, it's evil.
Well, that's why a lot of the true crime stories like Dateline, of which my story has been on Dateline and four other TV shows, including one out of Canada. And
Which one? Out of Canada?
yeah, yeah, I forgot the name of it. It was like The Devil I Knew, or Who the Bleep Did I Marry? It was one of those
Okay.
shows. It was from
Okay.
Canada. And yeah, they came down here and interviewed me and all that good stuff. But when you're watching those shows, there's usually a main theme, and that somehow I'm going to kill you, my spouse, because I want to make money. I want you. They be careful about ever taking out life insurance for yourself, because John wanted to do that on me at one of our discussions, and I said no. I said, you're older. It doesn't make sense to take it out
Right.
on me. But see, that
Yeah.
was in his plan later on when it was getting ready to do the murder attempt. And yeah, it's financial. Some there have been stories where they get married and within 2 months the bride is dead because they've gotten these big insurance policies, and uh, and yeah, it's so sad that well, they have no morals. There's no moral compass, and
It's so hard to believe, like even to this day, with all the stories I've heard and everything I've read about psychopaths and sociopaths, like I just, it's like I can't bring myself to believe that a person could have no moral compass. Like I don't know if it's like being naive or just refusing to believe that there are people who just don't function like the rest of us exist. Um, it's a very difficult reality to behold.
well, this I call it the antisocial umbrella,
Yeah.
and under that is the sociopath, psychopath, and the narcissist.
Hmm.
And when people are suffering from these mental issues,
Personality disorders.
yes, there's no changing them. There's no fixing it. So that's the other thing, is especially as women, we get into a relationship and, well, I'm going to make it better, and oh, they got this bad habit. Well, I can change them, and I always remember one book I was reading later on in my recovery, and it says, when you meet somebody, hey, maybe they're wearing these ugly shorts and whatever, but they're a very good person. Well, yeah, maybe you can get them to change what shorts or whatever they're wearing, but you're not going to be able to change who they are deep down. It's
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, we always want to fix things. We always want to make it better. We want to, we want to be the
Savior.
little codependent housewife that we've been trained to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were recovering from something, and I would like you to name what it was that you were recovering from, because I think the word needs to be said.
sure, when after the murder attempt, um, and besides, well, even before I decided to write the book, but on the way back, because it happened on the East Coast, and I'm on the airplane, total tears, was asked, do you think you could even fly, by the attendant. Oh, I'll be okay. My husband just tried to murder me. I realized that it was a drama that I had not been trained to handle, and so I decided I would get help. I would see a therapist. Fortunately, the company I worked for, they would do 8 sessions, and that was, and I was very lucky. I got the right therapist, the right time. Not all therapists are good. Not all therapists can maybe relate to whatever your issue is.
Mhm.
But so I made an appointment, and in the first session, the therapist, she listened to me, and she said, well, she said, we can work on one of two things. We can work on the grief that you're feeling in the death of John, the Admiral, because in my mind, so the person that he was, that I thought he was, had died. He was still alive, but
Mhm.
that person, so there's a grief
Right.
of letting that go. Or I could work on understanding why I would stay in the marriage so long it might kill me. I
Hmm.
said, I think I'll work on the second one. Thank you very much. And so she started talking about codependency.
Okay.
And I had not really heard that word. And I don't know if in um, current psychology speak if they even talk about codependency
I
anymore.
think so because it's a word that I hear a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So codependency means that that as a codependent, I was an enabler, and I enabled him to practice his evilness because I was always going to try to make things better for him. Another enabler is somebody married to an alcoholic or a gambler who, you're not going to change them, but you think you can, and you try, and so you 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 tie your life into theirs, and that's that codependency.
Hmm.
And and a lot of it is, um, I was just reviewing my notes, and it was like, yeah, what I learned as I would do this work on codependency, that to go into a relationship, you need to be a whole person.
Hmm.
But if you're not a whole person, two halves, if that one person is a half and you're a half, that doesn't make a whole. You have to have two whole people coming together, and then you have that common, you put the circles kind of again, there's a common area, but you still have your own individuality. You don't lose that. And that's what happens in a codependent relationship.
Okay.
So there was, on my website, uh, a dancewiththedevil.com, I have different subjects, and one of them is recovery. And I talk about different books that I've used and different methods. And yeah, so the first time I went to the bookstore to get this Codependent No More, and I walked into the bookstore, and you're kind of looking around like, who's going to see me in the self help section, because it's just so new and so. And yeah, so then I found the book, and read through it, and then went back to get the next one, Beyond Codependency by this author. And and I was just looking kind of like this, and down at the bottom was this book. It was only one of them, and I pulled it, and it was called Recovery of Your Inner Child.
Hmm.
And that book, I think anybody that's wanting to understand themselves should read that book. A lot of exercises, and it's about discovering your inner self by using opposite hand
Hmm.
therapy. So if you're a dominant hand, you write a question and you answer it with your non-dominant hand. It involves writing. It involves drawing. It's just very therapeutic. It's um, and and that really helped me. And so that's one of the, yeah, Recovery of Your Inner Child by Dr. Cappuccioni.
Hmm.
Uh,
Did you, I'm assuming that the person you were when you entered this relationship and the person you became when you left it, were two different women. Did you realize at some point during the relationship that you had kind of lost yourself or that you couldn't recognize yourself as a result of being involved with him?
Well, there would, I mean, I always like to pay bills, and we always were having bills, and he was kind of out of control with his finances and the credit card debt. But then he always had this story about his family, and he was going to get this inheritance, and we'd pay everything off. And I call it dangling the carrot, because you're thinking, okay, everything will be okay once he gets this. Not that I was a gold hunter, I mean, but it was just whatever he was going to get would be help to
Hmm.
take care of the finances. No, I mean, it was like it was a fun relationship. I mean, we went on trips with friends. We, had dinners with my family, and they'd come over, and we had a pool, and he would read to my nephew. He'd take my godson out for lunches. I mean, it was not like this. I actually feel it was like two different people. That almost maybe there was a struggle to, even though he was he was had this basic evil in him. He once told me that his time with me was the happiest in his life. And as I learned more from his stepmother about his life, and
Hmm.
I think that's true, it was he was trying to function in a family situation, in friends, and it just the evil took over. It just it was sad. I really feel sad for him. I feel sad for people that are mentally ill.
Um, when when did you start feeling bad for him as opposed to angry with him?
Oh wow, that's hard to say. I mean, even in a marriage, your husband, doesn't pick up his clothes, and uh, you get angry because he doesn't pick up his clothes, and then you have a big old fight, and you're not talking for 3 days. So how do you say that out of that that person's going to be a psychopath who's going to try to murder you? So you're not putting that all together. It takes the process. Uh, when I came out the other end, I had the process that I could go back and I could look at, and I could say, "Oh yeah, this was happening, this," and it was accumulating, but it accumulates in a way that you don't really recognize it, and that's why the homicide detective that showed up afterwards, I call him my angel. I said he really saved my life in that he started asking me questions like, "Well, has he ever tried to murder you before?" And at first it was like, "Well, no." And then he kept asking, and then that's where it came to the reality that the prior year he had tried it with the car, he had tried it with probably a gun, he had done it with the fall down the stairs, but those things were isolated. It was never identified. But then so you go through life, and your vision of looking back has so much more clarity than when you're in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, how did you learn? Oh, first, I just want to go back to something you said about the detective saving your life. I would argue that you saved your own life because while he was trying to strangle you, you knew exactly what to say and what to do to get him to leave you alone, at least for a little bit.
Well, that was part of the codependency.
Yeah.
You see, you're living in this codependent world, and yeah, he tried to murder me with ether. I had a struggle for my life. He's sitting on top of me and pouring finished pouring the ether out, and I worked in a lab, so I knew what ether was, and just trying not to move my head on. But anyway, he ran out of the ether, and I looked up, and he's on top of me, and he's got these evil eyes. I mean, I've never seen eyes like that before, and the codependency kicks in, and I go, "John, if there's a problem, we can talk about it." Now, did I say, "Oh, what am I going to do to get out of this situation?" No, it's just that the codependency, and even we were taken to this county facility after, and um, the people working there said they were all amazed that I came up with that, and I said that because that saved my life. It broke his trance, and yeah, I got him to because he was old. I got him to lay down, and, "Well, John, why did you do this? Why?" "Oh, well, I found out I had cancer, and I was going to go jump off the Key Bridge and commit suicide, and I didn't want you to know." And I mean, all these things that are just really confusing you, and so I took his hand, and he went to sleep, and then that's when it was the decision. What do I do? Do we try to wake him up, and once he wakes up, we'll go over to Bethesda, Maryland, and to the Naval Hospital, and we'll check him in, and if he has cancer, we can work on it, treat it, because again, you're in codependency. Codependency gets so ingrained in you.
Yeah.
It's not like you turn it off and on. It's there, and then I decided, no, I needed to leave that room or I wouldn't leave it alive. And so I just laid his hand down and stood up and walked to the edge of the bed, and he didn't move. Walked over to the door quietly. And when I went to the desk. I mean, I'm in stocking feet and all. And I said, call the police. My husband just tried to murder me with ether. But then by the time the police came, it got called in as a domestic violence situation. And then I by that time I had really switched back into with the codependency and said, we really need to get him to the hospital. You know, he had some kind of a psychotic break. And and then that's where um and they had separated us and at this facility. And I've been interviewed a couple of times, and that's when I'm sitting there looking down, and I see these shoes, and the one of the therapists said, well, we want you to introduce you to the homicide detective Greg Smith. And I'm thinking, homicide detective. And this was always in my memory. I just looked up, and here's this handsome looking guy. I go, wow, that's a homicide detective. But he's the one that actually put clarity by asking me the right questions, because again, I had not thought of anything that had happened that prior year as a murder attempt.
Yeah. Do you
No.
remember what questions he asked you?
Well, it was like, has this happened before? No. And well, has he tried to murder you before? No. And well, has anything weird happened? And then you start pulling back the memory, of the car accident, and then it becomes, clearer.
Yeah,
And so he was arrested for attempted murder. And yeah, it was, yeah. Then when I came back and back to the West Coast and I went through every single piece of paper in his office. And then that was starting to bring even more clarity to a lot of things that had happened. Like he showed up in Indianapolis when I was on a business trip, and it was foggy, and I think he was going to try to have me have a crash, and then he could get the insurance, and I would die, and he would be okay. And that was his on that final murder attempt with the ether. He had gotten a room where he could take my body out to the car. We could go have a crash. He had taken out extra insurance on the car, which we never would do, and I was going to die in a crash, and he would be injured, and he could sue, and that
again,
was.
it's that planning. It was premeditated.
Oh, definitely.
That's what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah.
How do you learn to trust yourself after after something like this?
Well, I think that one is you seek help, mental health. I mean, for a guideline. And so when um, I turned into survival mode when I got back. Besides going through his office, I changed the locks of the door, and I started looking and investigating. Did he have somebody in the area, that maybe he was a cohort with, or so it became a survival thing there, and because there was that fear he could have somebody else that was going to come try to murder me overnight, even
Yeah.
though he was in jail. And then by working through and understanding myself and understanding what his issues were, that that helps you move on. And um and so yeah, I had met this one gentleman, and we dated for a couple of months, and then I realized, no, this isn't, you know no, you're, for the whatever reasons, it was like, this isn't going to work. And
Right.
yeah, so you listen to that little inner voice, and pay attention, you know.
What would you say was the most difficult or challenging part of your recovery?
Oh, hmm. Well, I think continuing after even I had the sessions, then I joined Codependence Anonymous. So I would go to meetings, and I would, continue to read, continue to you know investigate me, and but then also, um, then it became about writing the book, about sharing my story. And so I would start going to, I got books on writing, and joined the International Women's Writers Guild and went to a conference, and that was again, I have a lot of what I call amazing moments in my life, and that was an amazing moment because I flew to New York, rode the train up to Saratoga Springs with the people that founded the organization, and after a couple of days, the the leader came to me and she said, "Oh, we want you to speak tonight at the meeting. There's 400 women, at this conference." And I said, "But I haven't written anything. I mean, I've got no. We want you to tell your story about what you've been through."
Hmm.
And so I said, "Okay." So instead of going to the workshops, I went back to first I went to the little chapel that they had on the campus. It was held at Skidmore College. And I said, "Okay, God, obviously," so I'll get emotional. "Obviously, there's something that I need to say tonight to help somebody. And talking with you today, I feel there's somebody that's going to hear something that I have to say that is going to help them." And so, anyway, so I went back to my room, wrote out what I was going to say, and that night I got up in front of the people, and I was going to, pretty much read what I had written, and I realized that all of a sudden um, I wasn't really reading. Maybe glanced down, and it was just flowing out of me. And I said, I said, "I have to tell you at the close of it, I have to tell you something about recovery. I realized that tonight I'm wearing the same blouse I was wearing when John tried to murder me." So you move on in your life. You don't get tied down into that, "Oh my God, I'm a victim and I was so stupid and all." No, you understand why you were in it, and you move forward, and you create your new life. And uh and the way that it worked out for my book, and that I I know we only have an hour, so I can't get, but there were
Your
miracle
time.
things.
Take your time.
Oh, there are miracle things that happened, that the book, that I got a New York agent and a New York publisher, and um, and that I was on all these TV shows and radio shows and podcasts, and just to be able to share, and then knowing, like, I've recently was at a restaurant and sitting next to this couple, and went over and started talking to them, and ended up that her attorney used my law to help her in her divorce. That's the affirmation, that what propels you in life to help others. It just you find new focus, um, and when I decided to write the book, I hadn't even known that I was going to change the law.
Yes,
You know,
yes. That happened as you were writing it.
well, um, well, I kind of started writing, and then because we were enmeshed in this divorce and whatever, then that took over for a couple of years, and then I got back to the writing. But
Yeah. So I think that part is probably one of the most inspiring things that you did. Let's talk about that.
well, so I had to get divorced from this man. Now he's in jail back in Virginia, and I was told, well, he has to have a California lawyer. So I had to try to help find a lawyer for him, and then as we progressed, when you're dealing with an antisocial, they're terrible in the courtroom. They can go in there and they can manipulate a jury, they can manipulate a judge, they can keep it going on and on. They love the courtroom atmosphere, and we every time I was write a letter to him, it'd go through my attorney to his attorney, and you have to pay for that. And then my attorney was smart enough that he realized that finally that we were dealing with a psychopath, sociopath, antisocial, and so he made me co-attorney on the case. And I'm not an attorney, but he said, "You're an intelligent woman." He said, "This way you can deal directly with John's attorney. We don't have that extra money involved." And then I ended up going to court twice by myself during the proceedings and winning. I was in judges' chambers and one in the courtroom. I was at the one table, his attorneys at the other, and I won. And but I was uh, sitting there one day with the attorney, and I said, this just, I don't know. He said, but the law is the law. I'm sorry, we're no fault divorce, and it's been that way 30 years, and everybody's everything's divided 50-50, and I was going to have to pay him alimony, and I had to pay car and medical insurance on, and even though he was in jail, and he was going to get half my retirement, half my 401k. I mean, it was just, and I was so upset, and I went to see a famous tort lawyer in San Francisco, Melvin Belli, and I was sitting there talking with him, and Melvin says, "Oh," he says, "I wish I could make him sleep with the fishes." He said, "But the law is the law." And I said, "Then the law needs to be changed."
And you changed it.
And it took me a year and a half to find somebody to carry the bill in the legislature, in the state legislature. I was told, you can't change the no fault divorce. You can't put fault back in. And without going through all of it wasn't easy to do. I mean, I became sponsor of the bill. Didn't know what a sponsor of the bill would do, or an organization. Um, but yeah, made it all the way through committees and through the House and the Senate to the governor's desk for signature without a negative vote, but it was a battle.
So what does the law state now?
So now, if you're convicted of attempting to murder your spouse, you don't get alimony, you don't get medical and car insurance, you don't get half of the retirement fund or anything like that, and you have to pay for the divorce. And the law's been amended
Incredible.
twice. It's been amended twice now. Oh, and when we did the law, there was no statute. We were going to do amend this, amend that, and then the chairman of the first committee was going to say, "Oh, we'll either table it or just throw it out and table it for the next year." And I said no. I said, I want to do it this year. I have my people that are going to testify for me lined up. So I'm sitting around this table working with these lawyers and senators and all, or I guess they were the representatives, and I looked at them, and they're going back and forth, and some of the terminology I didn't even understand that they came up with because I had left it in their hands, right? So we're sitting there, I go, "Excuse me, why don't we write this just in plain English?" And they kind of, and they got real silent, and then but oh God, I put my foot in my mouth. And then one by one, yeah, she's right. So we lined out throughout the whole bill and put a whole new bill in place that
Incredible.
just said what I just said. And then the amendments were to include conspiracy to commit murder if you were convicted of that. And also the latest one was, well, in 2012, also included spousal rape.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
That, that's incredible. Are you consulted every time an amendment has to be made? Like, are you
no.
tied to,
No.
no? Okay.
No. The only way that I knew that the one for spousal rape happened was that Crystal, she got in touch with me,
Who?
and Crystal was the lady that was, it was her, she was the spouse that had been raped, and her husband was in
Okay.
jail, but he was doing all kinds of crazy things from jail, and with the kids, they have kids. But yeah, so I went up to uh, Sacramento with her, and went around with her. But yeah, and my first book signing was on the peninsula, and this lady came up afterwards, and she says, "I have to shake your hand." So she's shaking my hand. She said, "My attorney saw that you were appearing today, and he said you have to shake her hand because I used her law to help you in your divorce." So yeah.
How often do you hear from women who have either read your book or heard of um, the the law that now exists thanks to your efforts? Um, how often do people reach out to you to thank you or to connect with you?
Not as much anymore. Right after, are you still there?
Yep.
Okay, because my screen just went blank.
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay, so after okay, there you are. After the book came out, I heard from quite a few women, and anybody that wrote me, I would answer them back. First I say I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, and I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you advice for your particular case, but I would give them encouraging remarks, and if I knew what area they were from, I would look um, um, in their area, and I would find programs that might help them, and so then I would send that back to them. And just like, in my book and on my website, I talk about the domestic violence number for the United States. Well, today I thought, well, and I'm speaking to Canadian women. Hey, ladies, 1-877-977-0007. Toll free 24/7 if you want help with domestic violence. So I'm sure that Nadine will somehow post that,
I
maybe.
will. I
Yeah.
will. And I will
Uh,
also make a donation in your name to
oh,
thank you
thank
for participating
you. Oh, thank
in the
you.
podcast. Of course. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, and there were a couple of websites too. And what I did was I just put in Canadian domestic violence help. So there's a couple of really good websites out there too. That
Yeah.
one's by the government and one's about shelters. So
I think it's so gracious of you to not only listen to these women's stories, but to also involve yourself in a way to see how you can help them and look at what resources are available to them in the area that they live in. Um, I love that and I respect that a lot. Because in a way, even though like you went through what you went through and that chapter is closed, um, you still carry your mission today.
yes,
You
yeah,
still choose to get involved and use what you went through to help others, even though you could choose to just close that door and you could say, I don't want to think about this anymore, or this is behind me. But I just think it's really beautiful that your door is open, so to
yeah.
speak.
Well, when I did the law wasn't to help me. It didn't help me at all, but it
Yeah.
would be helping anybody that came along after me.
Hmm.
And I set my web page up such that a lot of women would say they wanted to write their story. So I have writing as one of the subjects. So if somebody wants to write a book, and I have different things for them to think about. And number one is the abuser dead, because these people they like to sue you.
Oh,
They put you in court, and you could try to hide it. So that anyway, there's a whole bunch of that, and then people say, well, they want to change the law. So I have advocacy as another choice that you can look at. That if you really want to change a law, here's some things to think about, and
yeah.
how to go about it, or and then the recovery. And just recently, a woman did send me an email off my website and thanked me for having all the recovery sources that I have there, because she's having some mental problems. She didn't say what they were. Obviously through something domestic violence,
Yeah.
and she just didn't know where to go. And now I gave her some help to things to go get help. And of
That-
course, then I have the section of psychopaths and um, and learning about them and red flags and
Yeah. Before we part ways, what are some red flags to look out for?
oh, number one, do they work for the CIA or the FBI or whatever it is up there in Canada?
Oh,
Because
okay.
that gives them the ability to
Here without uh
well, yeah, to put on this front that they're somebody important, but also that allows them to disappear in many cases,
Yeah,
and well, I can't tell you what I was doing because,
right.
it's secret or, and so, yeah, I think I said if they say they're in the CIA, FBI, run. um, Another is that if they say they have family, but you never meet the family, and there's always some excuse. So, well, why you can't meet them. Oh, just and then a lot of stories. And then, like I said, that's why you want to check stories out because anybody can say that
Right.
any
Hmm.
and yeah. So I know I had to list a whole bunch of my book, and my mind is just somewhere else right now.
That's okay. That's okay. So what are you up to these days? What is life like for you?
Well, do a nice big birthday party for me.
Yes.
And I did like the writing, so I wrote the little book of success when I learned in writing my first book that there were four tools that I used throughout life and I used an example of going back to school and graduate in my 30s and graduating summa cum laude. I used building a house with my first husband, changing the law, and going back, anyway. And so that one I did self-published. It's called the Little Book of Success because it is little, but and then I said, well, I do like this writing, so I am in the middle of writing a fictionalized true story. I guess
Oh,
that's the way that everybody says it now these days. About an Irish lady who was born into Anglo-Irish society, so she was the Down Abbey family, a lot of and the upper crust, and then throughout her life she changes courses and she becomes a rebel and is part of the Easter Rising of 1916, and she's caught and condemned to death, but they commuted her sentence. But yeah, I thought that I love that arc, that transition of she was a little she's an interesting person anyway, and so yeah, so I'm having a lot of enjoyment writing that. So half of it's done and commercially edited, and I'm in part two now.
amazing. So when can we expect it to be published?
Oh, probably after I'm dead.
Oh, stop.
I have no idea.
That's a
I
long time away from now.
I do need to get back to it. I have my card table is back here with all full of the binders and because I've done a lot of historical research, and that's what takes the time, and so I will get back to it. And
Okay.
uh,
I'd love for you to let me know when it's done. And regarding your little book of success, where can we find it?
Amazon, good old Amazon, yeah, yeah. Along with my book is still on Amazon also. I think I'm up to 4.4 stars on Amazon.
I think it deserves even more than that. It was truly so well written, so detailed, um, and you were so generous with you were generous with your story. I feel like you didn't spare any details. Um, you took us along for the ride. Had me cheering for you, obviously. And I really think you are the embodiment of resilience. And it's very, what you accomplished is truly inspiring. Truly.
Thank you.
Of course. Of course. It was a true pleasure talking to you, Barbara.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you too.
Absolutely. And I hope we can stay in touch.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
I remember you were born in early September, right?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm late August. So I'm going to
Okay.
check in with you at least once a year to
Okay.
wish you happy
Sounds
birthday.
like a plan. Hey, they're both calling.
Oh,
Well, this has been a real inspiration to to know that people are
Oh, yes,
still involved and can still get something out of what I've done, and and
absolutely,
that's why it
absolutely.
happened.
And even for someone like me who's never experienced domestic abuse or being in a relationship with someone with that sort of personality disorder, there's still something in your book for me because you represent a woman who went through something extremely difficult, overcame it, and became even better as a result. And I
Yeah.
think that can speak to anyone, regardless of the circumstances that they're in or have been through.
Also, these people can be at your work. It could be at your
Yeah,
church. There's another book of the sociopath next door. So a lot of this gaslighting, a lot of these crazy feelings, a lot of this control, it's not just in marriage. It could be your workplace.
that's
And
true.
so, yeah, it's just understanding that, and just you know, but a warning, as a closing warning for women,
Yes.
if you are in a domestic violence situation, be very, very careful with how you approach leaving, or letting your abuser know that you're even thinking about it, looking into it, because the most dangerous time for a woman is when she is leaving.
I've heard that many times.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
heard that many times. So, how do you recommend, and I don't know if you feel comfortable pronouncing yourself on this, but how would you recommend a woman or a man go about leaving um, a situation like that?
First of all, I think that you need to understand more about the situation by seeking help through domestic violence hotlines, or your local domestic violence uh, uh, chapters, and then you will learn also then the things that you need to think about before leaving. Uh, in my case, uh, I started presenting what I thought were facts, and that just triggered him into even more of that final. Okay, I got to kill her because now she's getting too close.
Mm.
And so, yeah. So you don't want to, like, your computer at home or your cell phone, anything that you want help finding. You don't do it with somewhere that they can get that information. And if you have to go to the library, or talk to your friends and family too. don't you don't have to keep this to yourself, even though it might feel embarrassing, which it did part of it for me. Oh my God, this is my second marriage, I'm failing, I can't you can't no, you need to tell your family and friends what's happening, and let them understand. Maybe they can agree with you, and help you through that process. But don't give the abuser any hint of what you're thinking about doing.
Yeah, you have to let like let them feel like they're still in control.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope this has touched somebody somewhere.
I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. I will
Okay.
let you know when the donation is made,
Oh, that's so
and
sweet.
I'll be in touch. Thank you so
Okay.
much once again.
Okay. Thank you again, and just let me know then how we can listen to the podcast.
Of course. Of course I will.
Okay.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Have a great day.
Well, wow, is it like that? Bye bye.
Bye.